Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Ventura County Planning Commission. And the second item is to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please stand and face the American flag? Place your hand over your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First of all, we'd like to welcome our new clerk.
Thank you.
Congratulations on the position.
Thank you.
And the clerk would please call the roll.
Commissioner McGee?
Here.
Commissioner Dukas?
Here.
Commissioner Onstadt?
Here.
Commissioner Wessner?
Present. Thank you. This the next item agenda is for public comments. These are comments that are for anything that is not agendized. Understand under the government code, we can only receive information and ask pertinent questions, but we cannot take any actions. Is there anybody here for anything other than what's on the agenda? Seeing or hearing none, we'll move on to item number 5, approval of the March 7th minutes. Commissioners, what is your desire?
Move approval.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Not hearing any. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So passes. Number 6, the reason we're here today, and it is for the request for conditional use permit to be granted to authorize conduct of assembly use church pursuant to section 8105-4 under PL 12-0115. Becky, are we ready?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Chairman Wessner and Planning Commissioners. Good morning, Chair Wessner and members of the Planning Commission. I'm Becky Linder here to present the staff report for a conditional use permit, PL 12-0115, the Hillside Assembly of God Church. The proposed project is located in the county unincorporated area near the city of Camarillo. It is located north of Las Posas Road on Anacapa Drive. The general plan designation for the proposed project area is existing community urban reserve, and the zoning designation is RE 20,000 square foot minimum lot size. The surrounding land uses are primarily residential, and adjacent and south of the site is an elementary school. This is that big lot right here. The facility was previously permitted under CUP 2768 and CUP 3354, both expired. The latter permit, CUP 3354, expired in September of 1990 due to non-renewal by the applicant. The church has continued to operate without a valid CUP from September 1990 to the present. The applicant requests the new CUP to be granted to authorize the continuation of the existing assembly use church facility pursuant to section 8105-4 of the Ventura County Non-Coastal Zoning Ordinance for a period of 20 years. The project includes the following uses: an assembly hall and classroom building, which is in purple. The buildings are in purple. A classroom and office building, a youth hall, small storage shed right here, and parking for approximately 47 spaces. The parking lot will be repaved and restriped as part of the project. The elementary school will continue with a maximum of 185 students. The hours of operation will be 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week, 365 days per year. Water is provided by Pleasant Valley Mutual Water Company, and wastewater will be disposed of through the use of an on-site septic system. Access is taken directly off of Anacapa Drive through a private driveway right along here, and gate, and no new construction is proposed. The CUP boundary I just wanted to mention is this entire portion outlined in red, but also the green is the existing landscaping. Just wanted to show you some site photos. This is a photo of the site looking west from Anacapa Drive. It shows the school play yard and the church in the background. This shows the entrance sign and the entrance gate and driveway, private driveway. And this shows the back of the church facility, the parking lot, which will be repaved and restriped, and some of the church classroom buildings in the background. The proposed project involves an existing use with no changes. Thus, it is exempt under Section 15301, existing facilities of the CEQA guidelines. Oops. All required findings can be made. See staff report Section E for more details. The proposed project is found to be compatible with adjacent land uses. No complaints have been received to date. It is consistent with the general plan policies, and it conforms with the non-coastal zoning ordinance. The Planning Division recommends that your commission certify your review and consideration of this item, find this project categorically exempt from CEQA, make the required findings to grant a CUP, grant the CUP subject to the conditions of approval as modified pursuant to the errata sheet provided to you today as Exhibit 10, and specify that the Planning Division be the custodian of the record. And everyone got the errata sheet? Okay. That concludes my presentation. The applicant, pastor of the church, Larry Swift, is present today to answer questions your commission may have. Are there any questions of staff?
Do I have any questions before we do that? Any disclosures?
No disclosures.
I have no disclosures.
I have no disclosures.
And the chair has no disclosures. So, any questions of staff at this time?
If they at some point in the future wanted to operate a preschool or daycare, what would they have to do?
They would have to come in to modify their permit. They were previously permitted originally with a preschool, but it's not part of the request right now. So it would be a modification of the permit.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
I'm sorry.
I can just have some clarification points for me, I think. On Exhibit 8, page 25 and 26, it talks about the sewage situation, wastewater. And they get permits from Environmental Health Division, so forth. But there's 3 of them there, and 2 are the same, and they say different things. So my question is, are they going to have to get a new tank, or it's a condition of approval? And I guess if they're guided by Environmental Health Division, that Health Division would determine to give them a permit whether or not their tank was adequate. So I'm just trying to figure out what items number 16, 17, and 18.
In the conditions of approval?
Yeah. And that'd be page 25 and 26. Bottom of 25 and the top of 26.
Okay.
I'm
You got
using
my
my iPad for the first time, so I want to try to see if I can find it in there. And I got it, so I'm familiar with what conditions you're talking about. I believe that they were required to upgrade or repair the septic system so that it was working properly as part of this permit. But what was your question?
Is that as part of the condition for an approval of CUP, or was that through getting a permit from environmental health?
Well, it's in the conditions of approval, but it's a requirement of environmental health.
So they may or may not need one right now, but if such time they do, environmental health would only give them a permit if they replace the tank.
What it says here is that prior to the issuance of a zoning clearance for use inauguration, which they will need to obtain a zoning clearance for use inauguration, once the permit is approved and the appeal period is over. They have approximately 1 year. And so prior to that, they will need to meet environmental health requirements and confirm that the condition has been satisfied as far as the septic system. So before they get their use inauguration, they have to meet their requirements, which is to replace the sewage holding tank located on this property with code-conforming on-site wastewater treatment system. That's the requirement.
Now, items 17 and 18 talk about septic systems serving commercial and multifamily. And the requirements look like they're two different things. And I don't know why that's there.
Yeah, the title, I would agree. The title is the same, but the requirements are different. The requirement, Becky is right, on 17, the requirement is that they need to replace the sewage holding tank. The requirement on condition 18 is they need to ensure that that complies with the LA Regional Water Quality Control Board, and all the Environmental Health Department is requiring at that point is written confirmation that that has complied.
So
But I'm not sure why
Part
they're
A, Part
entitled
B.
the same
Yes.
thing.
Okay.
Yeah, they're two different things, but
Okay.
they're related to the septic.
But was this because of the application for a CUP or just the normal permit process to environmental health?
It's because they have an on-site septic system, which is part of the CUP application. And it's normal and customary that the existing on-site septic system be functioning and be permitted per their requirements to date, current requirements. So
is this a situation where the CUP expired and now they're applying for another one, and
So-
because of changes of codes, if you will, they have to replace the tank? Okay.
yes, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. You asked my question. I appreciate the help.
I'm assuming there's no sewer to hook up to, is that correct?
Not that I know of. It seems like they would be offered that if they could do it, but
Do we know?
Yeah, the answer would be no, because they wouldn't be allowed to have a septic system if they were in proximity to the sewer.
I figured
Yeah.
as much, thank you.
it's something like if they're within 100 feet or 50 feet, they have to hook up, right? Something like that.
I'm assuming you would require it if it were available.
That's correct.
That's
Pursuant to the
correct.
county sewer policy dictates when you have to hook up, and they did not fall within the triggers that would require them to hook up to the sewer system.
Any further questions of staff? If not, then I shall, I'm sorry, did you have anything else?
No.
Okay. Okay, if not, then I'll open up the public hearing. I don't have any speaker cards. I understand the representative of the applicant is here to answer any questions, is that correct? Are there any questions of the applicant?
Yeah, bring them up.
You want to bring him up?
Yeah, bring them up.
If you please step forward and state your name and address, sir.
William Larry Swift. I live in Oxnard, 3081 Net Court.
Okay,
Pastor
Mr.
of the
Swift.
Church in Camarillo.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Mr. Swift?
Hi there.
Hi.
So what do you think of our planning staff and the process that you've gone through?
Well, it's an interesting situation first time I've ever heard of a church having to renew a CUP. In 40 years of ministry and a lot of experience, I've never come across this before. It's very time consuming, very time demanding, very financially demanding. There's some very good people that work for you, and they do their job very well, Becky being one of them, and several that I've dealt with were great. That wasn't true with 2 or 3, whose names shall remain my knowledge alone, but I have a hard time understanding why the church got a conditional use permit in 1987, and then we're going to have to renew it in 1990. I have a hard time understanding that. And I've never heard of a church having to renew a use permit before, ever, in any county in the state, except Ventura County.
So are you satisfied now with the CP that you are seeking? Is there any changes that you want to see made, or?
No, we've done everything we could possibly do to get the process expedited. Becky mentioned the fact that the parking lot has to be redone and restriped. That would have been done last year if this process hadn't started. We had started raising the money for that, and we were just about there when all this happened. We have used quite a bit of it for this process, for the architect and to the county and so forth. As far as the septic system, the tank and so forth, we have been dealing with the state of California since May, the Water Resource Board, and as a matter of fact, I was talking to Becky on the phone on Monday, and the gentleman from the Water Resource Board called while I was talking to her, and then I spent about an hour on the phone with him. We're in the process. We sent out the notification to all the neighbors, and within a certain distance, and he said that the process would be completed. He said that the permit from the state itself would be completed within the next 2 or 3 weeks, and then a couple more weeks after that to allow any comments that might possibly come in. But then we will come to the county. I was told that it would be best to get that permit first before we come to the county to get the permit for the tank system. But it's a pretty large tank, more than adequate for what we are going to be needing.
And do you have plans to? You don't have any plans to do the preschool and
No.
daycare anymore? No.
No, they had preschool and school there for a number of years. That was closed about, I'd have to check my records, but I want to say about 8 years ago. Financially became very demanding. The facilities are good, but not quite large enough to really support what, if you're going to have a good and successful school and preschool. Really wasn't quite large enough, and they decided that because of the financial demands and the space demands, it's best just to close it down. And we have no plans, none. I've talked to my board on several occasions during this process, because I said if we're going to do it in the future, we need to do it now so that we don't have to go back and go through this process again. Believe me, I don't want to do that. And they all agreed, and I agreed with them. We need to concentrate on the church itself.
Okay, thank you for that.
You're certainly welcome.
Any other questions of the Reverend? Just for your knowledge, I'm general counsel for the Presbytery of Santa Barbara. We have 33 churches, and yes, they're going through all their CUP renewals. Recently, Santa Maria was in a situation, and we couldn't sell a property because they hadn't kept their CUP up to date. So I'm diligently working with 32 other churches to bring them up to date. So you're not the Lone Ranger, I guess.
Well, that's the first one I've ever heard of,
Yeah.
honestly, that
Yeah.
that was the case. If we had changed our use, our use was less, not more.
Right.
And the reason for the septic system to need to be changed, actually, it's probably better than 3/4 of the septic systems in that area, in my opinion. But we had to have it inspected,
Right.
according to the CUP rules. We did, and the fellow said it's really not a bad system, but it doesn't quite meet the requirements.
Right.
We would like to hook into the city sewer system. That was my preference all along. The Methodist church just down the street from us tried to do that, I don't know, a couple of years or more now ago, and it was going to cost them, the last figure I heard was $150,000 to do so. Well, obviously that's not economically feasible for a smaller church. We would have preferred to do that, and I heard rumors from different people, and of course, I noticed I said rumors, that there was some who were wanting to bring the sewer system up Anacapa to about the area of where the school is or where we are, somewhere in that vicinity. If I had known that was the case, I would have fought having to do this other work and then use that money to hook into the city sewer system. But it's a rumor. I have been told that there's a good possibility that within 4 or 5 years that could happen. Could.
Right. Okay. Just wanted to let you know, you're not the Lone Ranger out
Yes,
there.
no, I understand.
Yeah. Like I said, in Santa Maria, we found some very interesting updates that the volunteers did to the buildings.
Well, we found a few of those, but we have tried to improve them.
Yeah.
The building had deteriorated, the facilities. The pastor before me was very ill and didn't even know what was causing it. He had, if I'm pronouncing it right, myasthenia gravis.
Yes.
And for some time, I think that's one of the reasons he closed the school, and he tried to maintain things thinking he was going to get better and didn't, and things just kept going downhill financially, numerically, et cetera, et cetera. And of course the facilities deteriorated. So we've been dealing with some of those things too. We laugh about it and try to make it right.
Okay. All right, sir. Any further questions of the Reverend? We certainly appreciate you coming down here today.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody wants to speak in opposition of the conditional use permit? Not hearing any. Staff, any final comments before I close the public hearing? Seeing and hearing none, I will now close the public hearing. Commissioners, what is your desire?
Move approval?
Second, any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations. Yep. With that, we'll go back to our agenda. Becky, do you need to talk to the Reverend about anything? Okay. We'll go back to my really cool annotated agenda. And it says here, we are now on number 7A, report by the planning director on board actions and other matters.
Thank you, Chair Westner and members of the commission. I don't have too much to report. A couple of things. I know that Commissioner Rodriguez had asked us to work on some language for special events on the security condition, and we are working on that. So probably not next week when we come back, but the next time we'll come back, we'll do a report out on that. And then also, you guys all have your new iPads, and so we are going to do, as we did with today's is going to be paper and your iPad. The next week, you already have your packets there, so it will be paper and the iPad as well, in order to give you enough time to get used to it. I'm not sure if you've all been through the training, but staff has, I think, and County Council has, and these fellows down here, Chuck Riggs and Daniel Herzog, they are your trainers. And if you have any questions as well after today's hearing, they'll be here to work with you on any notes you might have taken or anything that we can improve on. It will be a process that we, I'm sure, improve on in the weeks and months to come. So as you see something in your packet, something Commissioner Dukas brought to our attention is that when the photos are on there, they are not, you are not able to pinch them and make them and see them close up. So we're going to see what we can do about that. We'll work on that a little bit. And so as you see things like that, bring them to our attention, because obviously we want them to be well used and well loved. So that's all I have. Like I said, you have the only other item on your agenda is on April the 18th. That's next week. I'm sure it'll be a lengthy hearing, so.
Okay. Any items from the Planning Commission? Paul?
I just have a suggestion.
Yes.
We keep getting these CUPs that run out, in this case 22 years or whatever it was. Maybe that section where it says permit life or optional period, blah, 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 maybe that should be highlighted in bold or something on the first page. Because, people forget, I guess.
Well, I'm just going to tell you systematically the problem I ran into a year ago, which is absolutely true. What it was, we were selling the property to the Salvation Army, and under normally a CUP, from one church body to another, we just would assign it over. No, they had to go back in the archives using microfilm to find the original CUP. And, of course, then the inspection had to take place. And so what I'm getting back to is the rest of the churches. Yeah, I think we only had 3 out of the 33 that their CUPs were up to date. And I think it's a systematic problem, particularly with religious institutions, where that's not what they stay on top of. Yeah, I don't know really how to fix that other than to let them know.
Well,
Well, he had the impression that
They
were exempt. I mean, they got buildings and sewers like everybody else. I don't know why they would be exempt. I don't understand that logic.
So we'd be happy to put them in bold in the condition language if that's the request of the commission. Happy to do that. But also I wanted to let you know that we do send out notifications, and I don't know if it's every quarter or every 6 months, but we do send out notifications when we are aware that a permit is going to expire in that 6-month or 1-year period. So we send those out quite routinely.
But you're not always aware.
But we are not
Old
always
records or
aware,
whatever.
right? So you're right. So we have, we're working on databases that have built over a 40-year period,
Out
so
there
we're
with a
not always
microfiche
aware.
too, maybe?
Yeah, we're not quite to the microfiche yet, but because we retain all of our records. But, we're continually working and improving on that process. So we do send out quite a few of those, but we do come across these, but they're getting less and less.
So I think at some point, that'll be pretty much standard deal.
At some point, that will be very standard.
I
But,
won't
that would...
I won't hold you to a win, but
Because that would take somebody coming in and going through the entire filing system, to make sure, and each CUP has its own nuances and its own permit adjustments that were done to it over the years that may or may not have lengthened the CUP expiration date. So every file that you touch can be an hour-long research project to get the expiration date in our Acela system. But we do work on that. So,
All I can say is when I pulled up the Santa Maria 69, it was 2 pages. That was the whole conditional use permit.
Paragraph.
Yeah,
the good old days.
the good old days, right? Okay. The only thing I would at this step, I know there's a lot of talk up in Sacramento about revising CEQA again. Or do you get updates on that, or is it one of those things that maybe someday?
we do, I get continual updates. I belong to what's called the California County Planning Directors Association group. So a good majority of planning directors, I would say over 40 or 45, we meet in Sacramento once, sometimes twice a year. And we have people on that group. It's Pete Parkinson, the planning director for the County of Sonoma, who's been involved in CEQA and CEQA reform for probably his whole career. So he's also sits on been on the APA board for a long time too. So he typically sits on that. 2 or 3 people from that group do, and then they report out. And then we also, the county and many other counties, we have a representative through APA and through CSAC and many other places that they ask the county of our opinion on upcoming CEQA bills, and we are always happy to give it to them. So we're definitely engaged and involved, and Dan is involved in AEP, and so he kind of keeps us from the AEP and the APA, so the American Planning Association and the American Association of Environmental Professionals. So we do keep engaged in Sacramento.
So I'm going to professional guess on when we're going to see the new CEQA.
No, because the particular fellow that was doing the CEQA reform, Senator Rubio, is no longer there, and it was kind of a surprise to everybody. So now I think there's some interesting parts about what senator is going to take up that charge or how that's actually going to work. So I'm not as sure now as I was maybe 2 months ago when he spoke to us.
Okay. So I'll be in my second 20 years up here before it happens,
Yes.
is what you're saying. Okay. All right. Yes.
The discussion nationwide and statewide now regarding fracking. And my supervisorial district is an oil and gas area, and questions are arising. They've been using saltwater disposal wells and secondary recovery for 40 or 50 years. Do you anticipate county ordinances or permits? Now they just defer to DOG. Do you have any feeling about that?
Did you watch, the board took up that item on Tuesday, right? And for about maybe 2 or 2.5 hours, they looked at it and discussed it. I haven't been that involved with it. The agency director, Chris Stevens, isn't being involved through the Environmental Health Department, and he asked Dogger to come and speak and educate the board and the community on the fracking issue. But the way that the permit stands now, the way that the county ordinances stand now, if you are fracking in a well that you were permitted to do, that is part and parcel with what the permit allowed at the time. And so that is our opinion. I believe that is county council's opinion at this time. And so unless we're directed otherwise, we're still staying the course.
Don't even address it.
No, they don't address it specifically. Yeah, it's not addressed specifically in the permit. It's just part of the, I would say, talk about 2-page permits. Almost all the oil permits that the county has, right, are 2-page permits. They're very old permits, and they cover a lot of territory. And they say in large part that you can do almost anything associated with oil and gas production. That's how vague they are.
Right. So we have basically deferred to DOG or Dogger now.
Well, Dogger is the regulatory authority over
I know, but
downhole.
for our CUPs, what I found out in doing some research is we basically defer to them on those kinds of issues.
We are doing the land use portion of it, right, and they are doing the downhole portion of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions of staff? If not, be aware, next week is Commissioner Onstott's birthday. So,
Are you allergic to anything? No, it's chocolate.
Electronic devices.
it's all right, because mine's the following week on the 25th, so. No, but that's all right. We'd like to welcome our new clerk officially again. Thank you. Hope we get to hang on to you. We seem to get them trained, and the other departments take them from us. So.
Maybe we shouldn't train them so well, they'll stick around.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. All right, not hearing any. The one suggestion, Chuck, is get me an electronic gavel. Meeting adjourned. I'm afraid you was going to say that.
On a PC how you say control find.